The air hung thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. Screams pierced the haze, echoing off the ancient walls like shattered glass. You hear the thud of boots on cobblestone, the clash of steel against flesh, then silence broken only by ragged breaths. A soldier, his armor stained crimson, drags a bundle through the streets, heads severed and staring. Piles grow taller, shadows stretching under the relentless sun. One tower rises from men's skulls, another from women's, a third from the smallest ones yet. The city that once buzzed with merchants and scholars now lies still, its life drained into the earth. But this was only the beginning of the end. What drove a man to build monuments from the dead? The answer lay in a betrayal that ignited an inferno. What you're about to hear involves systematic massacre and acts of extreme violence against civilians. These events are documented in historical chronicles, but remain deeply disturbing. If you need to step away, I understand. For those staying, we focus on understanding the machine behind it all, not exploiting the suffering. This wasn't random savagery. This was calculated terror, a tool sharpened over years of conquest to break wills before battles even began. In the late 1300s, Central Asia churned with fractured empires, remnants of Mongol glory crumbling under local lords and rising ambitions. Timur, a warlord from the steppes, forged his path through fire and fear, claiming descent from Genghis Khan to justify his empire building. Isfahan, a jewel in Persia, stood as a prize, its markets overflowing with silk and spices, its mosques echoing with prayers. But when its people rose against his rule, Timur didn't just punish, he erased. This story reveals the system, how one man's limp hid a relentless drive, how orders flowed from tents to blades, and how echoes of that day still whisper warnings about power unchecked. Why does it matter now? Because machines like this don't die, they evolve. Picture the vast steppes of Transoxiana, where winds whip across endless grasslands, carrying whispers of ancient hordes. This was the world that shaped Timur. Born in the 1322 near the city of Kesh, he entered a land scarred by the Black Death and the fading shadow of the Mongol Empire. Tribes feuded, khans rose and fell, and survival meant mastering horse and sword from childhood. Timur's family belonged to the Barlas clan, Turkic nomads who had mingled with Mongol bloodlines. They weren't royalty, but they held sway in local councils, navigating alliances like sailors in a storm. As a young man, Timur learned the hard way. Raiding parties defined his early days, stealing livestock, ambushing caravans for quick gains. But one raid went wrong. Arrows flew, and one struck his leg, another his arm. He survived, but the wounds left him lame, his right side weakened forever. Enemies mocked him as Timur the Lame, a slur that fueled his fire. Instead of retreating, he adapted. He rode with cunning, using scouts and spies to outthink foes. By his 30s, he had gathered a band of loyal warriors, men drawn to his sharp mind and unyielding will. He married into powerful families, weaving a web of kin and obligation. The turning point came in the 1362. The Chagatai Khanate, ruling over Transoxiana, splintered into chaos. Timur allied with a puppet Khan, then maneuvered to seize control. He captured Samarkand, transforming it from a dusty outpost into his gleaming capital. Blue-tiled mosques rose, gardens bloomed, but beneath the beauty lay a bureaucracy of fear. Timur built an intelligence network, eyes in every village, reports flowing back like rivers. He rewarded loyalty with land, punished betrayal with death. This wasn't born from innate cruelty. It was forged in the crucible of his limp, a reminder that weakness invited attack. Trauma taught him, show no mercy or become the victim. And then the spark. In 1386, Timur turned his gaze west, toward Persia. The Muzaffarid dynasty clung to power there, their armies weakened by internal strife. Timur saw opportunity in empire to claim, resources to fuel his dreams. He marched with tens of thousands, a mobile machine of horsemen and siege engines. Cities fell like dominoes, but Isfahan loomed as the grand prize. That spring, as his forces approached, the city's gates swung open in surrender. But surrender came with a price, one that would ignite the fuse. The sun beat down on Isfahan's bustling bazaars, where the scent of saffron mixed with the murmur of haggling traders. Minarets pierced the sky, calling the faithful to prayer 5 times a day. This was a city of layers, ancient Persian roots overlaid with Islamic splendor, home to scholars debating philosophy and artisans crafting intricate tiles. In 1387, it teemed with life, perhaps 100,000 souls weaving through its alleys. Among them was a weaver named Layla, her hands calloused from years at the loom. In her mid-30s, she had built a modest life after her husband's death in a border skirmish. Her shop sold rugs dyed in vibrant reds and blues, patterns inspired by the gardens she tended at dawn. Layla represented the heart of Isfahan, resilient, devout, tied to family and faith. She rose early to pray, shared bread with neighbors, and dreamed of her son's future as a scribe. Timur's army arrived like a storm cloud. His generals, hardened men from the steppes, demanded submission. The city's leaders, fearing destruction, opened the gates. Timur installed a garrison of 3,000 soldiers to enforce order and collect tribute. Gold, grain, horses. The demands piled up, stripping the city bare. Layla watched as tax collectors raided homes, her own loom spared only by a bribe from her savings. Whispers spread. This is not rule. This is robbery. Tension simmered. One night, a spark ignited. A group of citizens, driven by desperation, attacked the garrison. Blades flashed in the dark. Shouts turned to screams. By dawn, the streets ran red with the blood of Timur's men, thousands dead, their bodies dragged to the city square. The revolt spread like wildfire, fueled by years of oppression under shifting rulers. Layla joined the crowds, not with a weapon, but with resolve, helping barricade streets. For a brief moment, hope flickered. They had struck back. But word raced to Timur, encamped nearby, his face hardened, eyes narrowing like a predator's. This wasn't just rebellion, it was a challenge to his system. He had built his empire on fear, stories of sacked cities preceding his armies, softening resistance. Isfahan's defiance threatened that. He issued orders: assemble the full force, march back. The machine whirred to life scouts ahead, supply lines secured, warriors primed with promises of loot. The confrontation built slowly. Timur's horde encircled the city, catapults thudding against walls. Inside, panic gripped the people. Layla huddled with her son, praying for mercy. Envoys rode out, offering surrender again. But Timur refused. They killed my men, he said, his voice calm but iron. Now they pay. The gates fell after days of siege. Soldiers poured in. Orders clear. No quarter. The act unfolded in waves. First, the fighters cut down in the streets. Then, the hunt began. Doors kicked in, families dragged out. Layla fought, clawing at a soldier's face, but a blade ended her resistance. Her body fell amid the chaos, one among thousands. Chronicles from the time describe the horror in restrained terms. Entire neighborhoods emptied, the innocent perishing alongside the guilty. This wasn't about individuals like Layla. This was about the system. Timur divided the city into sectors, assigning each unit a quota of heads. It ensured thoroughness, turning slaughter into accounting. Historians debate the exact number, but estimates range from 70,000 to 200,000 lost their lives. The air grew heavy with the stench, rivers choked with remains. One brief pause amid the frenzy. A scholar, spared for his knowledge, watched from a rooftop. The contrast struck him, the city's famed gardens wilting under trampling feet, petals mixing with dust. It was a dark irony, beauty crushed by the very force that would later build grander monuments. The escalation shifted as word spread beyond Isfahan. Timur's machine didn't stop at one city. It adapted, using the massacre as propaganda. Messengers carried tales to neighboring regions. See what happens to rebels? In Shiraz, another Persian stronghold, leaders surrendered without a fight, their gates flung wide. But Timur demanded more tribute doubled. Artisans conscripted to beautify Samarkand. From a general's perspective, the orders made sense. This executor, a veteran of 20 campaigns, rode through Isfahan's ruins, tallying heads. He had seen Timur's rise, knew the limp hid a strategic genius. Incentives drove the men. Each head meant a share of loot, promotion for efficiency. The system rewarded brutality, weeding out the hesitant. Whole villages on the outskirts emptied as refugees fled, only to be hunted down. A survivor's view offered contrast. A merchant who escaped through a hidden gate huddled in the hills, watching smoke rise. He had lost his family, his wares, but carried stories that would echo in chronicles. The conqueror spared artists, he whispered to fellow fugitives, but killed the rest to build his towers. Indeed, Timur selected skilled workers, masons, painters, marching them east. It was selective erasure, destroy the body, harvest the talent. The machinery hummed. Reports flowed back to Timur's tent, quotas met, resistance crushed. But amid the intensity, a quiet detail emerged. A soldier, pausing by a fountain, noticed a single rose blooming untouched. It was a breather in the storm, a reminder that life persisted even in devastation. Yet the escalation continued, the system spreading like ink on parchment, inking fear into every corner of Persia. The climax built under a blood-red sunset. Timur surveyed the carnage from a hilltop, his limp evident as he leaned on a staff. The city lay broken, streets silent, except for the moans of the dying. He issued the final command, build the monuments. Soldiers gathered the heads, stacking them into pyramids, towers of skulls, some say 35 in all, separated by men, women, and the young. The scale overwhelmed, nearly 70,000 skulls, according to one account, though others claim more. Time slowed as the piles grew, each addition a thud echoing the heartbeat of empire. The act itself implied horror without need for detail. Blades rose and fell, bodies stripped of identity. Families were not spared. The machines reached total. But then the crack appeared. In the frenzy, some soldiers hesitated, trading heads to meet quotas, a sign of strain. Timur noticed, executing the lax to reinforce discipline. It was overreach. The terror that secured obedience now bred quiet resentment among his ranks. Resistance flickered in small ways. A hidden group of citizens, barricaded in a mosque, held out longer than expected. Their defiance, though crushed, planted seeds. The system bent, but didn't break yet. As the last pyramid rose, Timur turned away. The breaking point passed. Isfahan's spirit shattered, its people reduced to warnings etched in bone. What happened next unfolded like a shadow receding. Timur moved on, his army swelling with conscripts and loot. He crushed the remaining Muzaffarids, executing their leaders in spectacles that mirrored Isfahan. Persia folded into his domain, its wealth funneling to Samarkand. The conqueror's fate twisted years later. He died in 1405, en route to China, felled by illness, his empire fragmenting among sons. Survivors of Isfahan scattered, some rebuilding in ruins, others fleeing to distant lands. The community endured, but scarred, mosques rebuilt, markets revived, yet memories lingered like ghosts. Power shifted. Timur's descendants ruled for generations, blending conquest with culture. An ironic detail, the documents meant to glorify his victories, written by court historians, instead preserved the atrocities, turning tools of propaganda into evidence against him. The empire became a patron of arts, its blue domes rising from blood-soaked foundations. In modern times, the discovery came not from digs but from dusty tomes. In the 19th century, European scholars unearthed chronicles like those of Sharaf al-Din Yazdi, Timur's official biographer. Translated and analyzed, they revealed the scale. Pyramids not myth, but method. Archaeologists in Isfahan found little direct trace the city rebuilt over bones, but mass graves nearby hint at the toll. One team, excavating in the 20th century, uncovered skeletal remains from the era, fragmented skulls bearing blade marks. It proved the chronicles true, making the horror tangible. A Soviet expedition in 1941 opened Timur's tomb in Samarkand, seeking confirmation of his identity. They found his skeleton, the limp evident in uneven bones. Legend swirled a curse unleashed, coinciding with World War II's invasion. But the real find was documentary, inscriptions matching historical accounts, linking past to present. Why it matters echoes through time. This teaches about power's machinery, how fear becomes policy, resistance sparks escalation, a grounded parallel. Modern regimes use similar tactics, broadcasting atrocities to deter dissent. The universal truth? Humans build systems to conquer chaos, but those systems can devour their makers. Timur's legacy warns, unchecked ambition erases not just cities, but humanity. Return to that dusty air, the screams fading. What changed? A city reborn, but forever marked. The victims were meant to disappear, buried under pyramids of forgetfulness, but they didn't. They survive in chronicles, in archaeology, in the stories passed down, and now they're here with you because you chose to listen. If this moved you, share in the comments. What system in history chills you most? Subscribe for more echoes from the past. In the end, terror fades, but truth endures.